everyone, thanks everyone for being here, and also really thank you guys for being here early. I, since we did advertise this as starting at 1 o'clock, if you guys don't mind, maybe we'll just give it a few more minutes and give everyone else a chance to jump on, and we'll go from there. All right, I have noon now. I see, thanks to a couple of our MDPB members who have joined. Why don't we do this? Why don't we do a real quick introduction of the MDPB members who are here, and then we'll launch into some discussion. I guess I can start. For everyone I haven't met, my name is Matt Scholl. I'm your main EMS medical director. I'll just run through the list of folks I see with me, starting in the order that they're appearing on my screen. Kate, do you want to go next?
Sure. Kate Zimmerman, your Associate State Medical Director.
Beth?
There it is.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Beth Collymore, Region 5 Medical Director.
Thank you, Beth. Seth?
I rhyme with Beth, and I'm Region 2 Tri-County.
I think I see Kelly here with us. Kelly, are you available to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I'm Kelly Meehan-Kusay. I am the main ACEP representative to the MDPB.
And I'm just taking a quick scan of the group, and I don't think I see any other MDPB members, but am I missing someone that isn't jumping right off? All right, well, I want to thank everyone for participating today. The bottom line is that these meetings have historically become increasingly important to us as the MDPB thinks about the protocols, and having your input and your kind of comments about the protocols is critical. I think from a fundamental standpoint, our protocols are really our commitment to do our best for patients when we're called to duty, and we want to make sure that we're always meeting that commitment for our patient population, so that we're always ensuring that our protocols are as good as they can be. And the MDPB takes that very literally. What I thought we might do today is just kind of introduce everyone to kind of a process, and introduce everyone to kind of where we're at right now, what's similar this year, what's different this year a little bit, and then let you know where we're at in the process. But most importantly is really getting your feedback. And so these have been a important forum for that in the past, and we thank you for being here today to continue that. Just from a fundamental standpoint, last time around we try to do these every other month, recognizing that when we've tried to do these every month, we haven't always had robust attendance. We hope to really up the attendance as much as possible this time around. We also recognize that sometimes the conversation that the MDPB takes is long, and it may not necessarily be that much of benefit to meet every month. We can certainly adjust as we get going, but the process moving forward will be meeting every other month moving forward. These forums have been, as I mentioned, very helpful for us in the past, dating back to 2017's protocol update. We started meeting via conference lines. I don't know if we truly recognize the benefit of these forums through those conference lines. Certainly there were some great ideas that came out of these, meetings in that time frame. But really it was in the 2020 preparation for the 2021 protocols that we really started adopting Zoom, since it was such a big deal and it becomes such a big part of our footprint. And I think through that mechanism, we really started understanding the benefit of these even more. But please don't discount those prior meetings, because a lot of good ideas and some of our current protocols came from those ideas, like the restraint protocol came from those forums and from ideas that you brought to the MDPB. What we've tried to do in the past is to really give an outline of the protocols and where we're at, to give a general review of where we're at to date and what's going on, to discuss a kind of broad strokes what might happen in the future. It's not always, the MDPB may not know exactly where we're going to go, for instance, with the green section right now, but if there is anything that is obvious that we're going to be discussing or deliberating, we will bring that to you here. We also, the most important part for us is, though, getting a chance to hear from you and hear your thoughts about the protocols and what your current your comments and your input on the protocols is all about. Why don't we pause there right now? Any questions so far? Any thoughts? Any questions or any comments from other MDPB members? All right, well, so I do want to just mention a few things that we're trying to do, just kind of give you an idea of process that we're trying to play out. Some of these things are just commitments to prior processes, and some of these things are are new for us at the MDPB. One of the things that we will continue to try to do is upload draft versions of, or final draft versions of protocols and change sheets as we complete those onto the main EMS website. And so part of this also, I want to just remind everyone that on the main EMS website here, if you click onto the Medical Direction and Practice Board page, thanks to Mark, right here, this is the new one. If you click onto
That's what I need.
protocol page, you'll see now that there's a section for the 2023 protocols. And as we start to get to a point where we're publishing final draft versions of change documents and of protocols, we'll be posting it in that MDPB resource page. That, can you guys see my cursor out of curiosity? Yeah, that I'm kind of running around right now. There's nothing on there now other than the list of authors and sections. But as we get to the place where we're posting those things, that's where they will be, and you'll be able to follow up with those moving forward. The other thing that we're doing is we're still meeting on the third Wednesday of every month. And if anyone has interest in participating in those meetings, you can find those meetings and times in the web links on the main EMS website. Again, it's always the third Wednesday of the month. Those are the kind of things we're going to continue to do and continue to try to make sure are still there and ready and available for you. Well, we've also published, like in the past, we've published the author set. So this is from last year. We've got that set up for you. So if you want to...
Sorry, I'm just listening to a meeting about...
Yeah, if folks don't mind muting themselves just for crosstalk purposes, that'd be great. But on the 2023 site, you'll also see the authors and the section authors, as well as have a direct link to their email so you can send them information or questions. Now, there are a couple new things that we're doing this year round. And Chris, do you want to talk about the protocol import form? Do you want to share that, or either on the screen, or share that link through the messaging section and talk about what we're trying to do with that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So if everybody can see this here. What we've done is we have developed a fillable PDF form that anybody can use. This is available via the main EMS website. And I know that Mark is online with us as well this morning. If he might be kind enough just to place that link in the chat. This is based off a similar form that is used by the MDPB authors to suggest their changes. It has several areas, as you can see right down here. If you would like to submit a change, go ahead and fill out this form. We actually put out a clinical bulletin, and I believe a copy of that is still available. You can submit one of these forms either directly to main EMS via myself or Drs. Scholl or Dr. Zimmerman. Also, another place, another person you might submit to, or even is probably a very good first place to have a discussion, is with your regional medical director as well. Once these are received, if not directly by the medical directors themselves, they will be forwarded to the medical directors and presented and discussed with the section authors and the state medical directors. If anybody has any questions regarding this or any processes, again, the clinical bulletin is available on the main EMS website, or you can also call or email me at my office.
Great, thank you, Chris. Any questions about that form at all? We tried to put that form together in the fashion that the MDPB thinks about the protocols. For those of you who have attended these forums in the past, this might sound familiar, but for those of you who haven't, it might be helpful to understand that the MDPB thinks really about when a question arises about the protocols, we tried to follow a process that first asks where the gap is in our current protocols. And we think about what the intention of that protocol in question is all about, that therapy in question might be about. We also ask ourselves about the motivation, recognizing that our protocols really should be centered around our patients. And the second motivation we always think about is, does this protocol help our providers, our clinicians in EMS assist our patients? And so some of our protocols might be directed immediately at the patient, but they also might be building out systems that either support you as an EMS clinician or support patients as well. And then the other things we think about really are the impact or the expected impact, what our goals of that protocol are. And the final thing we think about is the cost, not necessarily exclusively from a fiscal standpoint, but also from an education standpoint. How much does it take to build this into our operations? We also think about from a logistics standpoint, including what's the impact on the service, what's the impact on the need to communicate around with our stakeholders about this, what's the medical director impact, quality assurance impact, et cetera. And so since the MDPB tries to take that fairly structured approach to considerations around the protocols, we thought it would be also helpful for you to understand that, and we built that kind of same conceptualization into the form that Chris just shared. And thanks to Chris for sharing that, and for Mark for identifying where it's out on the website for everyone. Now, along with the things that we talked about earlier, the things that are a little bit that are traditional for our process, and the new things that we're introducing, including the stakeholder input forms, I also just want to talk to you a little bit about our process, and I want to share with you a little bit about some of the stuff we're doing. And again, if folks don't mind muting for now, please certainly unmute if you have a question or a comment, but just to keep things flowing, if you don't mind muting. But another new thing we're doing this year is that we are building in a lot of support into the process of reviewing the protocols. And historically, that's either fallen upon the state medical director or the state medical director and associate state medical director. The staff members certainly are a huge part of this, but we are continually committed to doing this process better. And in the conversation that Dr. Zimmerman, myself, Chris Azevedo, Mark Minkler had as we were kind of debriefing the 2021 protocol process, we recognized that there could be benefit in bringing another MDPB member into the fold, so to speak, and having someone else with high level oversight of the protocols. And I'm really excited to introduce Dr. Beth Collymore as our MDPB colleague and Region 5 medical director, who's offered to be more involved in the protocol review process with Chris, Kate, Mark, and myself to really help move this process along. And we're really psyched. Dr. Collymore has been involved in all of the recent protocol updates, but now is going to take a little bit more of a role to help us kind of keep the things moving along, keep us on task, keep us on our pace for deliverables as well. So welcome to Dr. Collymore in that regard, and thank you. That's become a little bit important for us because we have fallen a bit behind in some of our deliverables in the past. Some of this work that we do with the protocols is the direct responsibility of the MDPB. Some of the work we do in the protocols, we rely on other stakeholders, key stakeholders to help us out with. And for a variety of reasons, we've fallen a little bit behind in our deliverables and not necessarily gotten all the education out when we intended to. And so one of the things the MDPB is also going to do is really work to ensure that we're on pace and on our timeline and getting the education to you as early as possible before a go live date. And at present, our current timeline is to go live with these protocols on December 1st, which means we're really committed to getting education to you, including the online education, on September 1st of 2023. So December 1st, 2023 go live. We want to give a full 3 months for education, including online education. So a big part of Dr. Collymore's assistance will be helping us maintain those timelines and really working with us in the background to get all that stuff ready to be prepared for that. So thanks again to Beth for offering that piece of information or that support for us. Any questions so far about any of this stuff that we're talking about? Or any other comments from other MDPB members?
Matt, it's Kate.
Yeah.
So just, making sure that you're keeping an eye on the timeline, I think is really important to see where we're at and trying to submit suggestions for the sections. And Matt might be talking about this next. Prior to our discussion is really helpful so that we can keep our pace and our hopefully momentum. So just take a look at the section authors, and then Matt, are you going to share our timeline?
Yeah, I can do that. Give me 1 second. I'll do that right now, as a matter of fact. Thanks for that thought, Kate.
And Matt, just keeping with that, sorry, it's Beth. If anybody has any issues, just about the process of trying to get a suggestion made, feel free to reach out to me. My address is on the website, and I can work with you on facilitating that and getting it to the right person and formalizing the request. That's kind of one of my roles in this new position. So feel free to reach out to me and I'll communicate with you.
So real quickly, let me just pull this up for you all. We're trying to keep an active timeline in mind. This is a timeline that we've used in the past, or a process we've used in the past. We're trying to really double down on this process and make sure that we're consistently keeping this in mind throughout all of the meetings. You'll if you attend our Wednesday meetings, you'll see us sort of coming back or starting our conversation with this. The group tries to follow this as much as possible, given the contingencies that we run into and given the length and the context of the conversation that we have. But in general, I can't tell you a specific date that any given topic will be covered. My experience with the protocols is that it's really hard sometimes to nail down the exact date of our red section, for instance. What we're trying to do is we're trying to spend somewhere in the order of 1.5 meetings on any given topic, but the reality is that we sometimes go longer than 1.5 meetings in topic A and less than 1.5 meetings in topic B. So it might be hard for us to give you an exact date. We'll do our best by updating the website and by discussing in these forums what's going on and what's next. But you'll see here that topic number 1 is the gold topic. Topic number 2 is the orange topic. And then we've listed on the website, we'll be able to list for you all of the order that's going on. That was part of the clinical bulletin that Chris referenced. But please keep in mind the website and these forums or the MDPB meetings as ways to get more information and ways to understand where we're at. And it is helpful for us to hear your comments early in the process. So if, even though the ecomotic section is the last section, and there's something that you want to comment on, please don't wait until the very end of the process. Give that to us early on so we can build it into the review. And please recognize too that if we are in, for instance, May of 2022, and you come up with something that maybe just struck you, we will certainly weigh that and we will certainly think about that. It may not rise to a level that we halt our entire process to add it in and push our entire timeline back, but please know that we do keep an active list of ideas and of comments that we can even build into next go rounds of protocols. Certainly, if there's something that is essential and is life-saving, that is newly developed, the MDPB will weight that with the appropriate urgency as well. But this is sort of kind of where we're at. I wish I could tell you that we'd be doing X section on X exact date, but it's very, very hard to pull that off because of the nature of these conversations. Any questions or comments about that? All right, so we're kind of just started. We actually just picked this. So we've been talking about our last protocol review process in the months of December and January. We started kind of pre-briefing what we're going to do in this protocol process over those 2 months. And we just kind of started moving with the gold section. And that gold section is being led right now by Doctors Kelly Meehan Kusei and Dave Sakay, our main ACEP rep and our Region 4 medical director. We have literally just gotten going, so I don't know that there's a ton of stuff to tell you about that per se. And we've got a lot more to go with that that section, which will be we'll continue that and work on that this coming Wednesday. So a week from yesterday, as a matter of fact, will be what we're doing there. That's sort of, we're pretty early on. I don't know, Kate or Beth or Kelly, if there's much to talk about yet, but if you guys can think of anything, please speak up right now.
No, I think the big things that we've just been looking at with this section are just making sure the protocols align with the new EMT scope of practice. So no big changes right now. We'll have a discussion this coming week about a possible new protocol proposal within the medical section, but I think that's really the big things for now.
This would also be a great time if folks have thoughts about the gold section, since Dr. Mihan Kuse has jumped on, is attending today. It'd be great if you have thoughts. Do you want to add for her and the rest of the group to think about with the gold section? If anyone, any of our audience members want to comment, please do so. Also, please don't feel like if you don't feel comfortable speaking in this kind of forum, please recognize you can reach out to her directly, her website, her emails on the website. You can also reach out to your regional medical director who can push information to her. You can do the same with myself or Kate or Beth. We can push information to her and Dr. Sakay. And then finally, please reach out to your ALS rep, and hopefully in the next few weeks, we will have refilled our BLS rep position. So that's another person you could reach out to as well if you have thoughts or comments. But certainly now, if you feel comfortable sharing anything, please do so. And again, please recognize that, again, if you don't feel comfortable in this forum, there's lots of other ways to get information to us. Again, as I mentioned earlier, a big part of these meetings are really to hear from you. So anything related to any parts of the protocol, the process, any of the protocols you have questions about or thoughts about, any comments about, we'd love to hear now from anyone who is willing to give us their voice now. But again, please recognize you can reach out to us through many different ways. Jason, yeah.
Matt, thank you. So one of the things that popped up when Darren and I, well, first of all, thank you for this really awesome opportunity to participate. Really appreciate it. But one of the things that popped up when Darren and I were going through a bunch of the naloxone leave behind stuff was specifically in yellow 4, which is the naloxone dispensation protocol. And where it talks about like the background of the protocol. And then the next line says, for patients refusing transportation, please refer to the transport protocol on grade 20, which in the sequence of the protocol seems like it directs you to, like if the patient's refusing transport, just go to grade 20. And then it would skip the actual protocol of the naloxone dispensation, which is for patients who are refusing transport. And grade 20 doesn't have any reference back to yellow 4 that talks about the naloxone dispensation at all in case of a suspected opiate overdose. And it's just like a layout thing, though, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the idea that you're coming up with is that we reference the gray section transport protocol, and if you were being very literal, you'd go to that, but not get directed back. Is that right?
Absolutely. I could share my screen if you'd like to see it.
Sure.
I have it up.
Let me stop sharing real quick, and I will.
Sure.
Hold on a second.
Somebody has to let me share too.
For some reason, I can't seem to. There we go. That would be on Chris, I think.
All right.
I'm pretty sure you can share it, Jason.
Thanks, Chris. I've got it. So that would be right here, the background of the protocol, and then go to grade 20, which in the protocol app, this is linked in the PDF, which would go to grade 20, which is really cool. The protocol app doesn't link to it, which is kind of good. But if you were to go to grade 20, it would just bring you here, which doesn't reference anything about the dispensation. So it's just kind of a, I don't know, kind of a layout thing for me anyway, a lot in a logical progression of the protocol.
Thanks for that, Jason.
No problem.
Yeah. Any other comment from other folks about protocols? again,
So
Hey,
these
Doc,
are, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just wanted to make a comment based on something Jason just said. And, I try to look up yellow 20 in the protocol app, and there's no way to find yellow 20 in the protocol app. Because the app doesn't list it by yellow 4, it doesn't list it by gray 20. So when a protocol says go to gray 20 or something like that, there's no way to find that in the app.
I'm sorry. So you're saying in the app, you'd like to have a way to jump from one protocol to the other?
That would be great, but I mean, so if you look in the app and you look under the yellow section, I was looking for yellow 4 for the naloxone leave behind, and there's nothing listed here. It doesn't list it by yellow 4, and so you're trying to guess which protocol it is by the description of it. But I'm not able to find it. But even if I was, it'd tell me, I guess I understand from what you're saying, it tells me to go to grade 20. But again, the app doesn't list it by protocol page numbers. It lists it by description of the protocol purpose. So however that could be fixed, that would be great.
Yeah, Ben, we can certainly look in that and work with our app developer. Most of the time, we do reference both a protocol name and the protocol page number, but we can look at trying to list things by name and page numbers in the future for sure. Maybe having two ways to think about this, but yeah, we can take a look at that.
Thanks, Doc.
I see a C. Barry's hand up. C, what's your first name?
Crystal Berry, Hollis Fire.
Crystal, thanks for coming today.
Anytime. So I just had a question. You had mentioned your goal is very hard to work to get the September 1st for all the online education available and ready. But will that include the in-person if we do any protocol upgrades again to further scopes, including the train the trainers for those ICs to appropriately train that in a time frame that allows us to implement it with the protocols?
So Crystal, thanks for that. First and foremost, I think we all look forward to different forums than Zoom. And I appreciate you keeping that on the radar. So we are in active discussion about what the future will look like around education. We were certainly forced into a circumstance this time around because of Delta and Omicron, in which we had to adopt an all online version. The reality is that we learned a lot about that, and we got a lot of good information back about that. So we are actively discussing the way that we will educate this coming up. And I think there were some things that were really, really good about the way things played out this year. And there were some things that are really, really good about the way we've done this in the past. And so while I don't have an exact answer for you about the way we're going to do this, please know we continue to talk about that, and we're continuing to try to work through that and discuss how we're going to do this. If we were to choose to do something in person, then our commitment would be to do that as early as possible so that it could be implemented through that route. But again, we're still talking, we're a step behind where you're at, and we're still talking about how to best pull this off when that comes. And so perhaps we can keep informing folks of what that's looking like through this meeting as well. When we're meeting on an every other month basis, we can keep you posted and abreast of how we're planning on getting this education in the hands of end users. More to come there for certain, Crystal, but thanks for keeping it on the radar. Chris, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that as our state education coordinator or not, but if so, please speak up.
I would just add that one of the things we're really looking at, again, just to reinforce what Dr. Scholl was saying, we're really this cycle going to be looking at not just platforms for delivery, but also how we do this. It's with the number of of providers that we have, the online forum has really opened up a lot of doors to, especially to get people and providers, any sort of EMS stakeholder exposure to the members of the MDPB and vice versa, and actually hear the information, one way, directly. We are working on some upgrades to our MEMS-Ed platform, so hopefully that will enrich the capabilities there for that online course. But there are a lot of things that we are really looking at. We do want to make this more user-friendly. And we definitely want to make it so that we are better able to target our content to the specific audience. And it is one of the good things about the way we're doing it this year is I really think that how we have this arranged and how we have this organized is going to not only be able to let us keep on schedule, but also allow us the time to be able to do some of those things that we weren't not able to do before, unfortunately. So it's my intention to definitely keep folks apprised of how this is going. I do give regular briefs to the Education Committee meeting. If you're interested and you want to hear more on a more regular basis, at least on a monthly basis, I encourage you to tune into the Education Committee meetings. Those are public meetings and links are posted on the main EMS website, and you can tune in every month. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I'm also seeing some folks in the chat. Thanks for those of you who are mentioning that you're planning on sending comments through the forums. That's great. Thank you for that. Also, I see the comments about landscape view, and certainly that's another thing we can add to the conversation with our app developer. Thank you all for that as well. And you know what? One of the things I just want to follow up with Crystal's comments, and Crystal, thank you for bringing that up. I think sort of inherent and implicit in your request is the understanding that educating to these new protocols is important and should be a standard, and educating to these new protocols really is essential. And one of the things I just ask of all of you on the phone, or on the Zoom rather, not the phone, all of you on the Zoom have kind of defined yourself as caring about this process. Just your attendance here today suggests that you're invested in this process and therefore also invested in the care that you provide patients. Please know that we're still, there are some folks who may not have even taken this protocol update, and we're trying to figure out, we know that there are some folks who haven't, we're trying to figure out if they're actually affiliated with services or not. But please help us if there are people that you know that have still not taken this. We don't have a lot of, please help us and advocate for them to participate in this process, to also engage in this process, and to also maintain awareness of this process and keep updated about what's happening in the future, but also update themselves about what we've already done. It's really, we feel it's really important, and MDPB really takes a lot of measures to ensure that what we're doing through the protocols is the right medicine for our population of patients. And we want to make sure that everyone else recognizes that too, and has the same amount of investment in this process and goes through the steps of orienting themselves to these changes. So thank you for that, Crystal. Any other comments at all from folks? I know that this is our first meeting, and I certainly get it, but as ideas come to you, as thoughts about the protocols pop up as you're using them in the next weeks to months, please start writing those down, seek out that protocol input form. Again, we don't want that to be at all a barrier to fill out that form for you to comment on the protocols, but we do think it might be helpful to structure the conversation in a way and help you understand how the MDPB thinks about things. Again, if you need help with that form, reach out to any one of us. We're here to help and want to capture your ideas and get them to the section authors for consideration and review.
Dr. Scholl, I was wondering if you and maybe some of the other MDPB members present here might be able to discuss with our stakeholders what exactly goes in, what does it take to go from a protocol suggestion to actually making that change or realization, you know, in terms of making that actually happen. What are some examples of things that, you know, may not, you know, make a protocol suggestion realized, whether it's a protocol or whether it's a suggestion for a scope of practice change? What are some things that the MDPB really looks at and balances out to try and make the best decision?
Yeah, thanks for that, Chris. I certainly would love for any of our other attending MDPB members to jump in on this. Maybe I'll start with a global statement and then open it up for them to also add their input. The most important thing, and I think in our mind as the MDPB really is, what do our patients need? What are the patient's needs? And we recognize that that we're not caring for patients. We're not there in the back of the ambulance. You are. So really on the back end of that first commitment amongst the MDPB is to also make sure that we're consistently doing our best to resource you, support you, and provide protocols that work for you to care for patients. So as far as kind of where our motivations are, we really are motivated primarily to ensure that our patients are really covered, but also secondarily, we are committed to helping you care for patients. Now, certainly there's that process I mentioned. That process is really how we try to approach a question about the protocols and adjudicate its merit in the grand scheme of things. So again, we think about the impetus or why are we doing this? We think about the motivation behind the protocol, the purpose of the proposed protocol, the impact from a patient, and then also the requirement that protocol comes with. There's always a cost to a protocol change, and always a cost to a protocol change. Even things that appear to be pretty minor can require significant communication and education. And sometimes in the grand scheme of things, we might choose to either not do something or delay doing something because the impact in totality of that one change, even seemingly small, with everything else that we're doing could overwhelm the educational process. I know all of you here, you know, I mentioned earlier that you're all defining yourself as fairly committed and invested in this process just by being here today. But we recognize that we ask a lot of you to go through the education around new protocols. And while I would personally love to spend 12 to 24 hours with you all updating every single nuance of those protocols, we recognize that your attention and time and your time is precious, and we want to be thoughtful of that. And we recognize there's only so much we can do with any one protocol update. And so we also, along with all the other things, we think about bandwidth. We think about how much we can put on one protocol update. And we recognize that that bandwidth is not infinite. In fact, we're pretty sensitive to that when we think about what we're doing, and we want all the changes that we have proposed to be as meritorious as possible for our patients and for you, so that we're not necessarily overwhelming you with unnecessary changes. I guess what we're trying to say is we're changing deliberately, not just because we need to or want to change. But let me pause there and make sure that there's no one else from the MDPB or any other thoughts from folks about that.
I also, you know, we ask for the evidence behind the change, and we need to make sure that it's, certainly standard of care within the scope of whichever levels that it's being proposed to. So really looking at the research and the evidence behind it and to vet that. Also, how often is it actually used? We're able to query NEFRs and find out, how often is this medication or procedure or condition seen, and is it looking at the cost versus, the cost of implementing that versus not is also something that we need to look at.
Thank you for that, Kate. Anyone else? Anyone else have any thoughts about that? Beth or Seth or Kelly?
Yeah, I think the other thing that we think about too is not just what the evidence shows for that intervention, but also does the evidence show that there is patient benefit, especially in morbidity or mortality, by implementing that intervention in the field. So, sometimes there's research that shows that things do improve patient outcomes, but it doesn't necessarily change if we're doing that 30 minutes earlier in the field versus when they get to the emergency department. So then we have to be thinking of, what is the additional cost if we have a crew stay on scene for an additional 20 minutes to do a procedure that the patient is going to get when they arrive at the emergency department, and what that means for the rest of the system while that truck is out of service. And really, I think the other thing that we think about is ideally we'd all be working in like a mobile emergency department or mobile ICU. You could have everything available to you immediately. We could be offering CAT scans in a patient's living room if we could. But when we think about what the cost is to our services and how that translates to the cost to the community, it's just not really feasible for us to be carrying all these things that, like Kate had mentioned, maybe we're using once or twice a year and then the rest of the time it's getting thrown out, or to have a mobile CT machine that it takes 2 hours to drive to that part of the state that needs the CT at that moment, when the patient could just be put into the back of the truck and get to the emergency department. So it really is this fine balance between what is the best for our patient, each individual patient, and advocating for each individual patient, and what is best for overall the community and those patients that may need an ambulance or may need a service, but we're busy doing something else.
Thank you, Kelly. Chris, does that help answer your question?
Yes, it does a little bit. I know it's a little early to mention this, but one thing that did go out, as I'm sure everybody attending is aware of, is the workforce, the labor force survey. And one thing that kept popping up in a lot of the free text answers were concerns about the protocols, that they may not be enough or that they're insufficient or whatnot. So I thought it might really help to give a lot of our field providers, a real good sense of what goes into creating those protocols. Not only that, but where it concerns scopes of practice, the reality that in order to be able to have a certain scope of practice or do that, it's also inherent to be able to support it, which which may vary, from region to region, and in fact from state to state. And so I think that that's really important in understanding, some of the changes that are made, the whys and the wherefores, and also being able to assist in that and provide input in that as well. So thank you for that.
Yeah. And I think if someone has a concern about our protocols being insufficient, please let us know. And these are the forums, or the other mechanism we discussed earlier on. That's the way to kind of address those concerns.
Matt, can I say one thing in regards to that?
Sure.
So Chris, I have heard a lot of people ask, why can't we do, and then they cite a very progressive, advanced service out of state. And I think my response has often been, one thing that those services are doing that many of our services in Maine are struggling with is that they have a really high functioning QA program where they're doing 100% of their chart reviews and run reviews and real-time follow-up. And they have very strong in-house education. Honestly, a lot of those services that have those very unique protocols do also have an influx of cash that we just don't seem to have here in the state of Maine. And so, like Matt said, we really do want to hear from everyone that is on the ground using these protocols, and we want to hear what you think that we need and what we can do to improve. And I think that Maine EMS's focus on improving our QA programs will really help us to bring our patient care and chart review full in regards to changing our protocols.
Yeah, and maybe I'll follow up on that with 2 examples. And I see Seth has taken his camera off mute, so I'll let him jump in ASAP here too. I mean, number one, Chris mentioned these mobile CT scans that some communities are using for stroke, right? Those cost in excess of $1 million a year and require a ton of training and upkeep and maintenance in order to perform well. I don't know that that's the right utilization of our $1 million in a community, because we don't have a lot of evidence to suggest that those things make a difference compared to our current mode of managing stroke patients. And especially, we don't have a lot of evidence to suggest they do it in the parameters under which we practice, which is largely suburban and rural. So those are some of the things the MDPP thinks about. The other thing that Kelly alluded to is the fact that some folks ask us, why can't I do RSI in my community? Why can't I do rapid sequence intubation? And the reality is that there is a tremendous amount of resources that go into a program that performs that. And we see services, we see a service such as LifeFlight, which has invested those resources. The amount of energy it takes to do a program like that is not necessarily something that many other services have duplicated. And those are some of the other considerations we think about, because some things may be able to be done, but only under the best orchestrated EMS system that has dedicated itself to a lot of resources. Seth, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I think you guys covered the main points here really well. I mean, I think it's, when we're thinking about a change, a big kind of multimodal decision that, gets talked about from a lot of different perspectives in terms of how big, the changes impact would be, what the educational lift or cost to services would be to implement it, how well it fits in, scope and into our communities. I have probably a little bit of a unique perspective because, when I work in a hospital, I do it in New Hampshire now. So I see a lot of protocols that are pretty different from ours, and instances where they've gone in a different direction where, they allow for like 3 or 4 drugs to treat one problem. And it's very interesting. It's a totally different perspective, but I wouldn't necessarily argue that it's better. I mean, you're spreading out your familiarity over these 4 drugs. You're certainly have a higher cost to consider stocking them all. So it's interesting. I mean, I think it's an interesting balance between, having enough evidence to really suggest that something's useful, not being the last person to adopt it, but also not necessarily being the first. I think there's a lot of startup costs to being the first or in the early wave of a new adoption. And I see that sometimes in New Hampshire. So I think it's an interesting conversation to have. And I think, if somebody has a specific issue and you bring it to us, the more you get to see how that sausage is really made. It will probably help explain how we reach one decision or the other. Yeah, so just an interesting process to work through. And trust me when I say it doesn't always come out the way I want either. But, you know, I feel like the overall direction is, you know, moving in a place that I like. And I also always feel free to bring up residual issues 2 years on and see if people's thoughts have changed, if the evidence has reached a tipping point. So yeah, I will stop talking. Thanks, guys.
I want to be cognizant of the time. And while we don't necessarily have a strict timeline, I do recognize we're bumping up to the noon hour and want to be thoughtful of all of your time. Or sorry, not the noon hour, the 1 o'clock hour. I want to be thoughtful of your time and just make sure we capture any last minute thoughts that folks have. Any other comments or questions from anyone, especially our attendees? Well, again, thanks to everyone. We'll be doing these meetings on this hour on the second Thursday of every month moving forward until we get through the end of our protocol process. Please recognize this is just one of the ways to be informed about this process. You can also attend our MDPB meetings or send comments or questions to the appropriate section authors, the ALS, BLS rep, myself, Dr. Zimmerman or Dr. Collmore, Chris, Mark are also highly involved in this. Please also consider using the protocol, the form that Chris demonstrated. And let me turn it over to Dr. Zimmerman, whose hand popped up, and then we'll go from there.
You said every month, every other month.
Yes,
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, every other month. Sorry. Thank you for that,
No
Kate.
worries. Yeah.
Please also, maybe next time around when we meet, please, between now and then, if you don't mind, thinking about the protocols, if there's something you want to comment on, please prepare, get it ready, send it to us one way or another, give it to us during this meeting, send us the form, reach out to folks. But the earlier we do that, the more likely we'll be able to build it into a substantive means of our conversation. So Kate, Beth, Seth, or Kelly, any final thoughts? Or
I just think it's great to see the number of people that are here. And so thank you. And, you know, if you have folks that are asking you about submissions or whatever, please guide them to this forum as well, if they're able to attend. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I think some pretty cool changes have come right out of this, you know, from Zofran at AMT level to, you know, making that IV now. And some of the ideas that I'm going to be presenting and, you know, stealing have come to me through just providers who I see at different meetings. So yeah, please hit us all up and let us know.
Chris, any final thoughts from your standpoint?
No, I think this has been terrific. It's been a terrific, you know, first forum. I think we laid a lot of groundwork. Just to let everybody know, the next one is scheduled for the 12th of May at noon, which is a Thursday. And just want to make sure that our topic is going to still be the gold section.
Who knows? We'll let you know in May. We got to get through April, but thank you for that, Chris. All right, everybody. Thanks again for everyone attending. I agree, the numbers are really neat to see. We hadn't always had this much attendance in the past, so it's really great to see so many people come. We want to really, really appreciate everyone and thank everyone for that. We look forward to talking to you on the 12th of May, if not sooner, and please be safe and have a good rest of your day. Take care, everybody.